With the help of Hashem, we are learning Rosh Hashana Daf Chaf Aleph. We left off on Daf Chaf Amid Beis. We are 4 lines before the bottom of the Amid. We're going to first continue learning more regarding what we call the Soit Ha'ibur. We're going to speak specifically about the second day Yom Tov in those areas where the shluchim of the Beis Din that went out to notify the people when the Rosh Chodesh was established were unable to reach before the middle of the month. Generally, we are speaking about the diaspora. We're going to learn how they would keep Yom Kippur in the diaspora. You can argue that just like there is a doubt as to what day is Sukkot, which is why they would keep 2 days Sukkot, they would keep 2 days Yom Kippur, but as we will see, and especially as we already began to learn on Daf Yud Ches, even regarding Rosh Hashana, L'shitas Rashi, that since in the vast majority of the times, the month of Elul was always a deficient month, it was a month of 29 days, and they were allowed halachically to rely on that fact, which is why, again, L'Rashi, they kept 1 day Rosh Hashana. Based on that, they were, by the letter of the law, allowed to keep 1 day Yom Kippur, even though we will learn certain Amoraim that went beyond the letter of the law, and they kept 2 days Yom Kippur. Imagine that. They fasted for 48 hours. We're going to learn a Tosfos that speaks about the power of Beis Din, even Beis Din and Chutz La'aretz. We're going to go to a sugya bekitza that we had in Sanhedrin, that we'll have again in Sanhedrin, as to what will be even only one reason that will justify for the Beis Din, for the Sanhedrin to make the year into a leap year. And finally, the question will be, how do sailors know when to do bedikas chametz? They're out there in the ocean, there's no communication, and we're going to have a very important siman that the Gemara will give, and that will conclude Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Aleph, which is going to speak about more in Yanim B'negeh the Soit Ha'ibur, and on Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, we're going to begin learning a Mishnah that we already quoted above, how when Eidim see the new moon Friday night, they are theoretically, or at least in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, they are by the biblical law allowed, if needed, to be Mechalel Shabbos, to travel to the Sanhedrin, to notify the Sanhedrin that they saw the new moon. And later, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, after the Koren Beis HaMikdash, hardly allowed them to be Mechalel Shabbos, even if the Chilul Shabbos is only on a rabbinic nature, which is traveling beyond the Tchum, and we only are allowed to continuously be Mechalel Shabbos if needed for 2 months of the year. We're going to have a Machloikes Tanoim. What happens if the moon is seen Ba'alil? Ba'alil means it's clearly visible to all. It's a clear night. When I see the moon in the horizon, I know that everyone else is seeing it. So is there a point where I have to tell myself, why should I travel beyond the Tchum or do something which is connected to Chilul Shabbos to notify the Sanhedrin that I saw the new moon? Everyone saw the new moon. It's clearly visible. There's Taka Machlekes Tanoim regarding that. And finally, at the end of the Amid, we're going to have some Agadata that's going to speak about the contrast between Moshe Rabbeinu and Shlomo HaMelech, and my friends, much, much more. Let's go again into Daf Chaf, Amid Beis, 4 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Says the Gemara, Amar Rab Zera, Amar Rab Nachman. So when you heard from the Shluchim when the Rosh Chodesh was established, then you know when is the first day of the month. And let's focus now on the 2 months of the year of Nisan and Tishrei, right? The months of the holidays. And just to speak out, that Danny mentioned it before, Shavuos is a non-issue, because Shavuos, the Torah says, is the 50th day after you bring the Omer, right? You bring the Omer, and that day is already going to be day number 1 of the counting of the Omer, and then you count 49 days. The 50th day of Shavuos, there is no doubt regarding Shavuos. And parenthetically, the reason why in Golus, in the diaspora, you keep 2 days of Shavuos, that's because of the concept of Loi Plug. But theoretically, Shavuos, by the time Shavuos came about, everyone already knew when the 15th of Nisan is, and therefore everyone will know when Shavuos is. But when it comes to Nisan, when it comes to Tishrei, so we are familiar with the concept. You don't know, let's put aside Rosh Hashana, let's put aside Yom Kippur. We're going to get back to that soon on Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. But let's speak about Pesach, and let's speak about Sukkot. So you have to keep 2 days Yom Tov. Let me ask you, what 2 days do you keep? Like, what 2 days do we keep? We keep the 15th and the 16th. Can I ask you a question? Why don't we keep the 14th and the 15th and the 16th? Let me tell you why I'm asking, why don't we keep the 14th and the 15th and the 16th? Because if you had prior coming up into the month of Nisan, like if you have in the months of Tammuz and Av, forget about Elul, Tammuz and Av, if both of these months will be deficient months, that means each month will only have 29 days, then that will mean that Rosh Chodesh Nisan will come in a day earlier than you think. Similarly, when it comes to Sukkot, so if Teves, I'm going to Teves now. If Teves only has 29 days, and Shvat only has 29 days, Pesach. You understand? And other Viter has 29 days, then Nisan comes in a lot earlier than you anticipate. In other words, theoretically, if you don't know because the Shluchim are not coming, just like, I get it, if you are only focusing on when was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, now there's only two options. Either the 30th day of Adar is no longer 30, it's day number 1, and then the 15th day is Pesach, or the 30th day remains day 30. In other words, Adar is a Chodesh Me'ubar, which is the sugi that we learned about in the past 2 days, and we concluded that even though probably in the majority of times Adar Asamach Nisan was Chassid, but they had the option of making it 30 days. So then Rosh Chodesh Nisan would begin a day later. So then the 15th is a day later, which is what we do today, which is the first statement that he made. That Amar Rab Zera, Amar Rab Nachman calls fake up. The doubts regarding Pesach, the doubt regarding Sukkot is only lekamei shodinon. It's only whether today is Yom Tov or tomorrow is Yom Tov. Using our vernacular, either the 15th or the 16th, which is exactly what we do. Today we know it's the 16th because we have an established calendar. In andere Werte, lememra, what we are saying, right in the bottom of Chaf Amid Beis, the chamesar v'shitzar of Dinan, that the 2 days Yom Tov that we keep, the Sfeika is 15 or 16. Now, why would we keep 16? We would keep 16, Chevra, because if the prior month was a Malay, if the prior month was a full month, if the prior month had 30 days, whether it is Adar, whether it is Elul, that means Rosh Chodesh began 1 day later, so the 15th is 1 day later. But Ar Beisar, but to have a suffix and to also say, let's keep 3 days Yom Tov. Let's maybe, like I mentioned, maybe already before going back, not 1 month before, 2 months before, 3 months before, maybe there were many deficient months, which means that the months began earlier than you thought. So maybe, ultimately Nisan began noch a day earlier. That lo yavdinam, that we don't have to be concerned about. And the question is, why not? Let them also have to keep the 14th, both of Nisan, both of Tishrei, because Dilma, Chasrua la'av, and V'chasrua la'elul. You understand? If you had a Chodesh Chassid, if you had a 29 days in the month of Av, so Rosh Chodesh Elul already began earlier than you thought. So if Rosh Chodesh Elul began earlier, then it's going to end earlier. And if Elul is also deficient, then Nisan began even earlier. Just go back 1 day. So answers the Gemara Daf Chaf Aleph. And this is a very important klal. Okay, in other words, let's just focus on Av. But I want you to know the same thing is going to be with Shvat, right? Same kasha would be in Shvat. Not only was other chassid, maybe Shvat was also chassid. Go to 1 month before Shvat. That's Teves. Go to 1 month before Av. That's Tammuz. We're beginning with the premise that Teves and Tammuz are deficient months. Rashi doesn't explain why, but the explanation why is that even when they were Mekadesh the Chodesh al Pi Ha're'iyah, the reality is that a lunar month is 29 and a half days, which means that if they would never be cloudy, if we would always have Eidim, that's the way it would be. 1 month would have 30 days, 1 month will have 29 days. And even when there was a Sanhedrin, and even if sometimes they took other things into consideration, like we learned yesterday, they took communal needs into consideration specifically before the Yom Tovim. So they would manipulate if they needed to Adar and Elul. But the other months that had no Yom Tovim in it, it almost always, and that's the way we're going to take as a premise, it was 29 days, 30 days, 29 days, 30 days. And in that type of reality, Teves and Tammuz were deficient months. So therefore, if it's going 1 deficient and 1 full, what comes after Teves? Shvat. Shvat should be a full month. What was the kasha based on? Why don't we also keep the 14th? Because maybe not only was Adar deficient, Shvat was deficient. Okay, if Shvat would have been deficient, it would have meant that Teves, which is always deficient, that's the premise. Teves would have been deficient, Shvat would have been deficient. It would have been 2 months in a row, not 2 months in a row right before Nisan. Even before Adar, that would have been deficient. That's very unusual. When something very unusual happens, even when people talk, word travels quicker than shluchim. Shluchim, Taka didn't have enough time to come to your location. But if something very unusual happens, today, Yarcha Chasera, Kala Isluhu. And since it would become, there would be a talk of the town, wow, something so unusual happened, you would have found out. And therefore, just like Teves and Tammuz, again, halachically, are deficient months, because that is the way it was in the vast majority of the times. If Shvat, if Av would have been deficient, you would have heard about it. You did not hear about it. So the presumption again is that Shvat and Av were full months. In other words, if Av is a full month, we know when Elul began. So there's only one doubt: when did Elul end? And even though you're going to say, hold on, if Av was a full month, Elul should be a deficient month. Ein achanami, my friends. Elul, vast majority was deficient. But because of communal needs that we learned about yesterday, their taka, more often than other months, the Beis Din had the right to say, we're going to make Elul this year into a 30-day month. There's a need. We're going to make Adar this year into a 30-day month. So that was taka the doubt. So in other words, you don't know whether Rosh Hashana was today or whether Rosh Hashana was tomorrow. So you're only throwing it ahead, which is why Sukkot's taka is only kept the 15th and the 16th, and Pesach has only kept the 15th and the 16th. Very good. The flow of the Gemara is really great, because based on what we said, the answer of the Gemara is based on a presumption, on a halachic presumption, that Teves and Tammuz are deficient months. Based on that, understand, Adar and Elul should normally only have 29 days, as we learned yesterday. Elamat's not fixed in stone. They can change it. And taka, because of that, what did we learn, Rashi and Daf Yud Ches? That during a long period of time, even in areas where the shluchim did not reach, on Rosh Hashana, they would keep one day Rosh Hashana. Because Elul normally has 29 days, and we know historically, Miyamois Ezra Ve'elach, it never had more than 29 days. Theoretically, they could have had it. So they kept they one day Rosh Hashana. And now what the Gemara doesn't even verbalize, based on that klal, that Teves and Tammuz are deficient. It's one on, one off. So therefore, Shvat is 30 days. So Adar is 29 days. Let's go now to Yom Kippur, to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Tammuz is deficient. Of 30 days. Elul has 29 days. If we can say that halachically, Ruba de Ruba, which is a fact, so we know when Rosh Hashanah is, so we know when Yom Kippur is. And that already explains why in the diaspora they did not keep 2 days Yom Kippur. It's very difficult to fast. And even later when they decided to make 2 days Rosh Hashanah, that's because you are able to. But to make 2 days Yom Kippur, since we are relying on this general 99% that Elul is deficient, so we know when Rosh Hashanah is, we know when Yom Kippur is. Taka for Sukkot will be Machmer. 15, 6, maybe Elul was Malay, maybe, but we can presume it's not. Now, says the Gemara story. What happened once was Levi Ikla L'Bavel. Levi came to a place where the Shluchim would not reach. He got there, B'chatzar B'Tishrei, on the 11th of Tishrei. 11th of Tishrei, whereas when they thought it's the 11th of Tishrei, why would they think it's the 11th? Because Elul only had 29 days. So Rosh Hashana was already earlier. But what he told them was that Basim Tavshila de Bavloi, how geschmack, how tasty is the dish of you Babylonians, the foods that you're making. They were eating food because they considered it the 11th. And Levi notified them, you know what it really is in the west, in Eretz Yisrael, B'yom HaRabba de Marava. Today is really Yom Kippur. But this is after the Churban Abayit. Huh? So Tosfos asked, how did he come on Yom Kippur? But Oy Gewalt. But the flow of the Gemara is so geschmack. Like we explained, if Teves and Tammuz is deficient, And that's the klal. So that's what they said also regarding Adar and Elul. They're deficient. And that's why they kept one day Rosh Hashana, and that's why they certainly kept one day Yom Kippur. But there was one time that Levi knew that they made Elul Me'ubar. They made Elul, which means Rosh Hashana began a day later. So therefore, Pashat, what they considered was day 11 was really day number 10. We're going to read in Tosfos that's going to answer Shlomi your question. Okay, and Amar, so when he made that statement, he didn't tell them, oh, you guys are eating on Yom Kippur. He made us a statement that the dish is so tasty here when they're fasting in the West. So Amri lay, so they told him, okay, Asid, testify in front of our Beis Din here, wherever Levi in Bavel, that you know that they declared Rosh Chodesh Tishrei a day later, or they made Elul into a 30 full day month, and they were going to right away. Now what? They have to stop eating. So Amar Lahu, to which Levi responded, that I won't testify, because I did not actually hear the Beis Din that determined whether Elul is 30 days or normally the 29 days. I didn't hear them declaring that the month is sanctified. And we're going to learn more about this today on Amud Beis. In other words, it's very normal that if you live in Yerushalayim and you see so many witnesses that already came at night because they saw the new moon, and you saw the new moon, you know for sure they're going to declare the next day Rosh Chodesh. When it comes to the month of Tishrei and the month of Nisan, which is the only 2 months, even though you know what's going to happen, for you to tell the Olam, no matter where you're going, guys, it was a deficient month. Rosh Chodesh was a day earlier. You have to hear the Beis Din saying after they accepted the witnesses, Mikudeshes. And if you did not hear them testify, you may not share that news. And why? Again, we learned that yesterday. No, since when it comes for the Tikkun Hamayadis, Yerkaya Messiah, even if the new moon was seen, but what happens, like we learned, just for example, if they were Taka declared the earlier day Rosh Hashana, then Yom Tov will be juxtaposed to Shabbos, or Yom Kippur would be juxtaposed to Shabbos. Beis Din had the right to be Ma'ayim de Edom, no matter how many they are, to ask them so many questions, and Beis Din can do that. Until every group gets confused, I'm not 1,000% sure. Okay, goodbye. So you have to hear them say it's Mikudeshes. Okay, so now let's read the Tosfos quickly. I know the time is running. So how did that even happen? Oh, it's if Levi knew it was Yom Kippur, there's so many questions here. So let's begin the top Tosfos. Levi equal Bavel, where Bavel was counting it as the 11th of Tishrei. But really, why? Because something very unusual happened, and that is that the Abru El, they made Elul into a 30-day month. So everything began a day later. And how did that happen? So he writes, that Levi was close enough before Yom Kippur that because he was keeping Yom Kippur. So how did he even travel Tchum? Forget about he wasn't eating. Yom Kippur Hava. Or Inami. No. He came on the 9th. He came, they were one day ahead. They were keeping fasting. Once he got there when they were fasting, but you know when they were fasting? Mamash at the end, right before they blew the shofar. How did Levi get there? Because he was only the 9th. That means he got there late. Something happened. He came right before the Ois fasting. And never, so all these Yidden after fasting all day are about to eat. That's what they told them. Oh, I'm smelling the food. You guys are about to break the fast. You're not allowed to break the fast. Now we're not done yet. So now Tosfos says, so they told him, Asidlan, okay, testify. And if you testify, not you make this comment, then we're going to say that we can't ois fast and we can't break our fast because it's Yom Kippur. So Amar Lahem, to which he responded, Why? I left on the 30th day. Imagine if he left on the 30th day at the end of Elul, and they did not declare that day Rosh Chodesh, so he knew they're going to declare it tomorrow. But he didn't hear it. Which would have been the day 31. He knew it because it takes the Beis Din minimum. You need, let's say, 30 minutes for the Eitim to come, for you to interrogate them. It was already within that time frame. There was no way they were going to do it. And the rule is, as we'll learn today on Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, so now the other question is, asks Tosfos, okay, he was not allowed to testify, but I don't understand something. If you know, he knew that what they were counting as day 11 is day 10. So even though he's not allowed to testify, how can he allow them to eat? They're eating on Yom Kippur. The answer of Tosfos is it's not Yom Kippur for them. That's a big statement. Answers Tosfos v'yesh loymar hatanan l'cham perik sheni asher tikru oisam mikroy kodesh ben bizmanim ben shloi bizmanim and v'amirin the Gemara atam afilu shoyegim atam afilu meizidim atam afilu mutain. If Beis Din makes a mistake, even a mistake, once they declare a day to be Rosh Chodesh, that's the way it is. Now, Tosfos has a big chiddush with this, because normally, Shlomo, this is regarding the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim. They were the ones that determined the calendar. What Tosfos is saying is that during the times of the diaspora, there was no communication, so every local Beis Din needed to tell the Olam, what are we doing? Normally, they would say, keep 2 days Yontif. But like we mentioned, by Yom Kippur, and L'shitas Rashi for a very long period of time, even Rosh Hashana, since Ruba Elul is only 29 days, they would keep it 1 day. It wasn't Stam. Beis Din said, Chevra, today is Yom Kippur. Once Beis Din gave that psak din, even though Levi knew they made a mistake, doesn't matter. Making a mistake means that at that same time, on that year, in Eretz Yisrael, they're keeping the next day. What we call the 11th, they call the 10th. If you live in your place and your Beis Din says that today is the 11th, you can eat. Now, if halachically he would be allowed to testify, then he had to testify for Beis Din to change their psak. But since the rule is that for the month of Tishrei, you have to hear the Beis Din declaring Mekudesh, and he didn't hear it, he was halachically not allowed to testify. So everyone believed Levi. Didn't matter. That's a very, very big thing. The koyach of a local Beis Din, not even the Beis Din in Eretz Yisrael. Once the Beis Din, or by us, even a Rav, gave a certain psak din, that is for you what God wants from you. Even when it comes to Yom Kippur Kodesh. Okay, back in the Gemara.
Rabbi, why did he create the doubt by bringing this up, since he could not be a witness?
So Kevin is asking a good question. So in other words, say nothing. I'm thinking, I like your question. Maybe, as we'll see in a moment, that certain people were machmir then and they kept 2 days Yom Kippur. Maybe by him making that statement, some people were machmir beyond the letter of the law and they fasted again. Could be. Right. Machmir is Rabbi Yechanan. Now, the shluchim that were sent, especially on the months of Tishrei and Nisan, so they needed to reach their destination to tell the local area when did Beis Din in Yerushalayim, when did the Sanhedrin establish Rosh Chodesh. Now you have to understand that even though, as we'll learn today, that for the witnesses to go to Beis Din, to tell Beis Din we saw the new moon, midoiraisa they can be mechalal Shabbos if needed. Normally the chilul is you're going beyond the tchum, but you have to go there, but that's only to go to the Sanhedrin. Once the Beis Din said today is Rosh Chodesh and shluchim have to go notify the people, they're not allowed to travel on Shabbos, they're not allowed to travel on Yom Tov. So when it comes to Nisan, other than the 2 Shabbos, because Pesach is 15, so you can have at least 2 Shabbos, other than those 2 days, they travel every other day. They travel all other days. When it comes to the month of Tishrei, you deduct at least 2 days of travel. They didn't have to keep 2 days Rosh Hashana because they knew when Rosh Hashana is. But you can't travel on Rosh Hashana, you can travel on Yom Kippur. Which means that there were areas that when it came to Pesach, they knew when Rosh Chodesh Nisan is. But in the month of Tishrei, they didn't know because they needed those 2 extra days, which you didn't have in Tishrei. So now the question is, they would keep 2 days Yom Tov, not Rosh Hashana again, Rashi, not Yom Kippur, L'Kol Alma, but they would keep 2 days Pesach, like we learned today, L'Kamei, 15th, 16th, 15th, 16th Sukkot. What happens if you live in a location that when it comes to Pesach, you know when the Rosh Chodesh was? but you don't know in the month of Tishrei. So comes Rabbi Yochanan and he declares that Kol Echad Amatu Shluchei Nisan. Even though by Pesach you know when is Rosh Chodesh, but since V'lei Matu Shluchei Tishrei, if you live in that area, that same location, which you're not, if when you lose 4 days of travel or 3 days of travel, the shluchim don't get there. Not to make a differentiation, la'abdu trei yoimei, you should even keep 2 days Pesach. Make 2 sedarim. Why? Nisan atu tishrei. Loy plug. Don't differentiate. Either you keep 1 day's yantiv or you keep 2 days yantiv. Says the Gemara story of Aivu bar Nagori, one amoid, and Abchia bar Abba, another amoid. They came to a location to have a matu shluchei nisan, that area was close enough that if you only have to deduct the 2 Shabbosos, the shluchim would arrive there for nisan. But that was an area that when it came to the month of Tishrei, matu shluchei Tishrei. And what did they notice? That the residents of that location were not following that which Rabbi Yochanan declared, but they only made 1 day Pesach because they knew when Rosh Chodesh Nisan was. And these 2 visitors did not protest. And Shama Rabbi Yochanan, but Rabbi Yochanan felt that his ruling is not chumrah. His ruling is the way it has to be. And a Rebbe has the right to expect of his Talmidim, of his Hasidim, that they're gonna always share the Torah of their Rebbe. So he was upset with them. And Amar Lahu, Lav Amri Lahu, didn't I tell you that Hechad Amatu Shluchei Nisan? But V'lematu Shluchei Tishrei, even by Pesach, even by Nisan, La'abdu Trei Yom Gezei Nitan Atu Tishrei. So I'm upset with you. And Nakud. Next. Rava have a rogel to have a Yosef v'tanisa Trei Yom. Rava was an Amoira. He fasted for 48 hours Yom Kippur. You have to understand that. It's not that you can eat in the middle. You can't eat in the middle. Just like it became even with Rashi, at some point, people began to keep 2 days Rosh Hashana. He said, I have to keep 2 days Yom Kippur. By the letter of the law, you can rely on the fact that Elul is deficient. You can presume that they declared Rosh Chodesh Echad B'Tishrei on the 30th. They made the 30th into the first. But Rava says maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't. And you know what? Zidna Chada Ashkach Kavosei or Eshtakach Kavosei. One time, mamish like the story we learned of Levi, he found out that he was right. And again, just like we learned Shitas Tosfos, not that everyone else, even B'Shoigeg, was Machalal Yom Kippur. No. Everyone followed the Atam Afilu Mutaim. In other words, everyone did the right thing, but the one time that he experienced that he kept Yom Kippur on the second day, where Eretz Yisrael was keeping Yom Kippur, it's so to say, it justified his Chumrah. Rav Nachman, Yosef B'Tanisa Kol Yom Kippur, another story. Rav Nachman is fasting. This is like the second answer of Tosfos. He was at the end of Yom Kippur. He didn't eat yet. La'urta asahu gavra mamash like Levi. When someone traveled, they didn't travel on Yom Kippur because they knew it's really only the 9th. And so that person, when you travel, you should not come in the last second. He came the last second. And you know when he came? La'urta asahu gavra. And he came to the area of Rav Nachman before Rav Nachman broke his fast. And Amar Lein, he told him, L'machar yom rabba b'marava. Tonight, L'machar means tonight, begins Yom Kippur. Amalei mehechanat, from where did you come from? Amalei, I come from a city called Midam Hariyom. Amalei, to which Rav Nachman tells this guest, Dam Tehei Achrisi, the name of your city is an indication that you're coming after my blood. Because he felt that, again, we're following Tosfos, that he's not mechuyev. Maybe in that case, he heard it from the Sanhedrin. But Rav Nachman felt, now that I know I'm going to fast, and oh my God, that's gonna take away my blood. And Kari Aleh, and he read regarding this oirach, Kalam Hoyu Ritzvenu. Kalam Hoyu means that our pursuers were swift. In other words, Rav Nachman felt that if this oirach would have come 10 minutes later, at least I would have broken my fast. Okay, and then I would have fasted. But now, this guy had to be so quick that he came to me before I even broke my fast. Okay. Sholach lei Rafuna bar Oven le Rav. Kad Chazis Demoshcha Kufas Tevis. Now we're going to focus a moment regarding why would we make a year into a leap year. Now, really, this is the sugya that we have in Sanhedrin, Daf Yud Aleph, Daf Yud Beis, Daf Yud Gimel. There are 3 reasons. We spoke about it when we learned it. And there is a machloikis whether just to make Pesach fall out in the season of spring, if that one reason alone justifies delaying the year, and even though it's das yachid, we are paskening like a das yachid. And that is that if you see that the season that we call the season of Tevis, or the Goyim Lahavdol call it the winter season, if it's going into the 16th of Nisan, then Abra Lahahi Shata, that alone justifies adding another month. And people are going to say, how can you pasken that way? It's only das yachid, it's das achedim. Don't be worried that we are following only one opinion. Normally we follow the majority because that one opinion has a base in the pasuk, and it's a base not on the pshat, based on the drasha. It says in the pasuk, "Shomeres chodesh aviv," guard the month of the first ripened produce. That's the pshat. But here we're darshaning shomer aviv shel tkufa, guard the spring season. That it should fall out during the month of Nisan. Now, what the Gemara adds, just want to say, the word chodesh means month, but another drasha, you can read it with the comments, b'chodosh, that the spring season should fall in the renewal time of the month of Nisan. What do I mean by the renewal time? As we mentioned yesterday, from our perspective, the moon becomes larger, until on the 15th it's full, and then it begins to look to us smaller and smaller and smaller. When is the moon still renewing itself? Up until the 14th. By the 15th, it's already full. Really, we learned in Sanhedrin, we need for the tkufa, for the season of spring, to begin by the 14th. If the tkufa of spring is going to fall on the 15th, you know what you do? You don't have to add another other. Even though, again, going back to yesterday, the rule is that other that's near Nisan should be deficient. Good. But if there is a need, you can make other into a 30-day other. So if the problem is only your 1 day off, then don't be ma'aber the year. Don't add another month to the year. Add another month to the another day to the month of Adar. Unusual. Like one time in today's story in Levi, they made Elul 30 days. You can make other 30 days, even though it's a samach l'nisan. But if it's going to fall on the 16th, to Hassan Shkambreda, because even if you're going to add 1 day, all you do is you'll bring it back to the 15th. It has to be in the Chodesh, in the renewal part. Okay, and he told him and since you have a drasha based on a pasuk, so we are paskening like the opinion of the Das Yachid, the Shita of Achim. Amalur Rav Nachman, the final halacha regarding establishing what day it is. And he spoke to Lahana Nechusa Yom, you had sailors. And Taka, think about it. Imagine you are on a ship. You're a sailor, you're a traveler, and you want to know when to make b'dikas chametz. He's not even speaking about when to keep the seder. Just lahoyer that today we do b'dikas chametz once. We don't do it twice. We can't do it twice because since we take in Pesach on the 15th, even though we also keep it on the 16th, when are you going to do b'dikas chametz? On the 15th to the 16th, you're not allowed to own chametz. So he tells them, when you leave your source, your port, and you didn't know yet when Rosh Chodesh Nisan is. So, again, the beautiful, he's not telling them not to keep 2 Sadarim, but he's telling them, you can only do 1 B'dikas Chametz. You can't do 2 B'dikas Chametz. Because Oir Lo Yudalid, if Nisan, if the Seder is the 16th, the way we keep it the second one, then when would you do B'dikas Chametz? The night before. The night before is Pesach.
But if someone's traveling,
yes,
if someone's traveling and they know in advance they're not going to be there early Yudalid, they could do B'dikas Chametz 3 weeks before, any day. No?
So what happens if you're a sailor and you have a limited amount of food and you want to know until when you can eat chametz? So
but you're leaving your home.
No, I understand that. You're leaving, you're doing b'dikas chametz. Samach is saying good. That in my home, if I live within 30 days, I do it in my home. Very good. But I'm on the ship and I'm taking food.
On the boat.
I'm on the boat. Samach, when do I do b'dikas chametz on the boat?
Oh, you're asking when can you do it on the boat, not in your home port.
Yeah. So he tells them like this, that ki chazisusi hara the mashlim liyoyma. He made a very big statement. Now you have to understand like this. Forget about the size of the moon. When is moonrise and when is moonset? So let me say like this, that on the 15th only, it's bidiyuk that when the sun is setting, that's when the moon is rising. When the moon is setting, the sun is rising. That's only exactly in the middle of the month. On the 14th, the moon will finish shining a little bit before sunrise, not at sunrise. So the siman that we know that it's the 15th, even though again, the Beis Din always has the right for communal needs, we established to change the day of Rosh Chodesh. But we are going to presume, halachically, that the Rosh Chodesh is on the right time. So normally, if I want to know when the 15th is, it's when sunset, when moon set and sunrise is exactly at the same time. He says, when you are out in the sea, that's on the 14th, not on the 15th. It happens a day earlier. Let's read it inside. That ki chazisu si'ara demashlim. When you see that the moon is finishing to shine, that means that it's moon set. When moon set is exactly at sunrise, not a little bit before sunrise, at sunrise, that's the 14th, and therefore biyaru chamiro, make biur chametz. That doesn't make sense. No, amos mashlim. When is the moon and the sun exactly in opposite sides of the horizon? Which is taka for us, it looks like a full moon. That's only on the 15th. But for Ha'anon me'ar beisan me'ba'iran, but biur chametz has to be done on the 14th. So how can you give that as a siman? So answers the Gemara. That was what Rav Nachman was innovating. That lididhu, for them, when you are out in the ocean, since the megaloluhu alma, the world is revealed. Number one, the heavens are very clear. Number two, there are no obstructions, right? There are no houses or buildings that are blocking the horizon. So what normally appears to us to be perfectly aligned, on the 15th, for them it happens already a day early. Me'ar beisar mashlim, no, there's nothing blocking your vista. And the heavens are very clear. So that was a Gavaldik Avart, and that's how you know, not that it's the 15th, that's when the 14th is. Bachal, I want you to know there are some times that to the naked eye, when it's a very clear night, when it's only the 14th of the month, it looks like it's a full moon. But it's not. But that happens particularly when you are out there in the ocean and the water.
I don't understand the whole thing, but you don't know when is Rosh Hashana, so you're all 2 days Pesach, like us, and then you do performance before the 14th or the 15th. So, I don't understand the whole thing. Why did they know when to do the performance? If you don't know when to Rosh Hashana, you all 2 days Pesach, and you do performance before.
So l'choira. Okay, so the answer, Shlem is asking, why didn't they do it like us? So the answer l'choira would be, is that they needed to eat bread. And if this did not happen until tomorrow, then they were able to do it only tomorrow. They would have another day of eating bread. They would only have to do bir chametz a day later. Maybe that would mean they would keep one day Seder in the sea.
So it's only because they're in the sea, not because they didn't know when it's Rosh Chodesh.
No, it's because they didn't know when it's Rosh Chodesh. If they know when it's Rosh Chodesh, there's nothing to talk about. It means if I left a port in Israel and I know when it's Rosh Chodesh, you follow what the Sanhedrin says. If I didn't know, there is a need, there's a lack of food, you have to ration it. And he's allowing them to rely on a heavenly sign. It's a beautiful, there's a line in between everything. In other words, on one hand, the Sanhedrin, they have the right for communal needs to say Rosh Chodesh isn't when it really is. On the other hand, people that are sailors can rely on the heavenly signs. Okay. Now we go back to Easy Street. This Mishnah was already quoted above, says the Mishnah, and even though Midah Oiraisa, really, if you saw the new moon at the times that the Sanhedrin is only going to declare Rosh Chodesh when witnesses say they saw the new moon, you can always travel to Yerushalayim. And if you need, we're not saying that you should stop him. If you need, you can be Machal Shabbos, but that's only on a biblical level. But Midrabanan, they only allowed for that to happen in the long run for 2 months. On Nisan and on Tishrei, Shebehem Shluchim Yoitzim L'Surya, we see something unique about these 2 months. We're comparing apples to oranges. The fact that after Beis Din declared that it's Rosh Chodesh, when did they send Shluchim to the diaspora? Only on 2 months. Everyone should jump out of their seats now. How can you say that? We began the Mishnah by saying that on 6 months the Shluchim go out. It's a mamash contradiction. The Gemara is going to ask that. But since we see Shluchim only go out, Surya means to Chutz La'aretz. Just an example. For those 2 months, so for those 2 months, they can go to the Sanhedrin to be Mechal Shabbos. And why only for 2 months? Why only for those 2 months? Because ubahem misakna nasamayadis, because here all of the Yom Tovim depend on Rosh Chodesh. And yes, I know that there are fast days. We know that, but you can't compare all of the fast days that we mentioned above to the months of Nisan and Tishrei, Pesach, and to Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur, and to Sukkot. And really, says the Mishnah, that then mechalel and afal kulan. If you saw the new moon, you went to the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim, and if you needed, you were mechalel Shabbos. Why? Because when there is a temple standing, fixing the proper Rosh Chodesh date will establish when you bring the Musaf. The Musaf offering is a biblical obligation. You got to do it on the right date. But once we are not bringing Karbanos anyways, so therefore they said, again, that's Sheva Al Taisa, don't be Machal Shabbos. The Mishnah is speaking about the uniqueness of Nisan and Tishrei because Shluchim would leave the Sanhedrin to notify the communities. Indeed, when was Rosh Chodesh? Only on those 2 months. Al Beis Chadoshim V'Sulay V'Riminu, we had this on the Mishnah Daf Yud Ches. Al Vav Chadoshim HaShluchim Yoitzim. Wow. Problem. Answers the Gemara Amar Abaya on the Hachi Ka'amar. Al Kulam Shluchim Yoitzim Miba Erev. As we mentioned in the Tosfos, that regarding all of the other months, if the Rashi gives an example, if everyone saw the new moon on the night going into the 30th, everyone saw it, and you're living in Yerushalayim, you know, everyone sees, there's going to be Edom that are going to come to Beis Din, and they're going to tell Beis Din tomorrow morning when Beis Din is open that they saw the moon last night, and they're going to make 30th into day number 1. So you know what's going to happen. Aside of Nisan and Tishrei, you can already go out. In other words, you cannot, Shluchim go out right away. Or save a couple of hours. Why do you have to wait for something that you know will inevitably happen? But Al Nisan, Al Tishrei, the rule is that until you hear Beis Din declaring that today is Rosh Chodesh, you may not go out. That is the meaning of the Mishnah. In other words, we are very particular, especially by Nisan and Tishrei. We don't open ourselves up to any remote possibility. And what would be a remote possibility? Again, going back to what we learned yesterday. Even if everyone sees the new moon, there are times that Beis Din has the right to be ma'ayim the Edom and not to declare it Rosh Chodesh. Tanya nami hachi, al kulam for all the other months. It's from 4 out of the 6. Then yotzmi ba'erev. Shluchim don't have to actually hear Beis Din declaring that day Rosh Chodesh. If they know it's going to be declared, I'll give you another example. If I'm in the Sanhedrin, like the story Tosfos today with Levi, if I'm in Yerushalayim and no one came on day 30, Shlomo, no one came. Now, I know that if Edom come, they need 30 minutes. I'm 20 minutes before Shkia. Today won't be declared Rosh Chodesh, and a month never has more than 30 days. That means for sure they're going to declare it tomorrow. Again, I can go out already. I know it's going to be declared. But Al Nisan, Val Tishrei, Acha Yishnu B'Pnei Beis Din B'Kodesh. You have to hear it from the Beis Din. And Tanach Rabbanon Minayin Shemachalal Malei Masa Shabbos. Like we said, really, that you can be Machalal Shabbos if you have to, is for every month. Midoiraisa. How do you know that? So Talmud Loimer, when it says in Pashas Emoy, Eila Moyadei Hashem. These are the festivals of Hashem. Asher tikru oisam, that you are to designate b'moy adam in their appropriate time. Remember what we learned? B'moy adam is also the word that we use to tell us that you can bring a carbon sibor on Shabbos. Remember that? It has to be brought on the right time. So in order to establish the Yom Tov on the appropriate time, go testify you saw the new moon. If you have to, be Mechalal Shabbos. If not, it will not be on the right time. Now, Yachal Kishem Shemachalal Achi Yiskachu, just like that, the Edom are allowed to go to the Sanhedrin, and if need be, even by violating the Shabbos, which they may do, Kach Mechalim Ad Sheyiskaimu, maybe the Shluchim that leave the Beis Din, to notify the communities when Beis Din already declared Rosh Chodesh, can they travel on Shabbos? We said today, no. That's why we mentioned that there were areas that during the month of Tishrei, since you can't travel not only on the 2 Shabbos, but you can travel on Rosh Hashana, you cannot travel Yom Kippur, they never reach. Maybe they should also be allowed to be Mechal Shabbos to notify the community. No, that you will designate, which means for the designation, you can be Mechal. Al Kriyos and Ata Mechal, but V'yata Mechal Al Kiyuman. And then the Mishnah says that why? Because you have to bring Musaf on Rosh Chodesh from Pnei Takanas HaKarban, and indeed Tanach Rabbanon. But Mishachara Beis Hamikdash, Omar Lahem Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And Bechlal, we know that there were so many takanas that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made concerning the Churban. This is one of them. V'chi yesh carbon. Why are you being Mechalel Shabbos to come to testify? There's no carbon. So therefore, iskinu shelo yeh mechalim ela al nisan va'al tishtei bilvad, exactly as we have in our Mishnah. Now,
Rabbi,
yes.
could you just clarify the timeline of the testimony and to when they established it as the Rosh Chodesh?
So then again, so first of all, Beis Din needed to know the Soito Ibr. They needed to study astronomy, and they knew when theoretically the new moon will be visible in that locale. They know that. They knew what part of the sky. They knew the crescent of the moon will be pointing in what directions. They knew the mitzias, but there was a mitzvah to hear it from witnesses. The earliest would be normally the night of the 30th. The night of the 30th is shayach, like we mentioned yesterday. If the moilat happened a little bit before noon in Eretz Yisrael, then in the beginning of the 30th, they don't have that much time, because if you go too much into the night of the 30th, the moon set already. You can only see it after sunset, before moonset. Say that. But if Adam saw it, they would come to the Beis Din and they would testify that they saw the new moon. Beis Din would say today is not 30. The 30th would become day number 1, which means last month only had 29 days. That's called the chassid, a deficient month. If no witnesses came on the 30th, again, ideally, let's say they didn't come because you couldn't see the new moon, but they would see it the next night. They should come to Beis Din to tell Beis Din that we saw the moon the night of the 31st, which would become day number 1. If no one saw the moon, not on the night of the 30th, not on the night of the 31st, Beis Din will have to declare day 31 Rosh Chodesh anyways, because you can never have more than a 30-day month. But you missed the opportunity to be Mekadosh at Al Pi Ha'Re'iyah. And the Adam that saw it, again, even if they saw it on the night of the 31st, and they know for sure it's going to be declared anyway, they have to go. That's the whole point of the Mishnah. Even if it's Shabbos, even if the only way of getting there is being Mechalel Shabbos, they can do it. Okay, says the
and the Chilul Shabbos we're talking is only D'Rabbanan or also D'Oraisa?
No, if need be. It's the normally when we speak about traveling, the Chilul Shabbos is only Midrabbanan Tchum. But then you have those shitas that hold that the 12 mil is a D'Oraisa. Let's go with that.
I mean, if they had cars, then would they drive a car? If they had
cars, then if they can make it, if they cannot make it without a car, they would travel on a car. And starting a car is a Chilul D'Oraisa. That's the point, exactly. If you have to, even D'Oraisa. Now, what happens? That no matter when it is, my friends, okay, you can be Mechalel Shabbos. What happens if I live in a place that to get to the base, then I got to be Mechalel Shabbos? But I know that other witnesses that live closer to the Sanhedrin don't have to be Mechalel Shabbos. And when it's a clear sky, the word Aliyah means it's clearly visible. Says the Mishnah, Bein Shanil Ba'alil, whether the moon is visible to all. Bein Shaloi Nira Ba'alil, which if it's not visible to all, that makes sense. Maybe no one else saw it other than me and someone else. Always mechalel in all of us Shabbos. No one should say, oh, it's redundant for me to travel. No. However, Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Rabbi Yossi, no. Im nira ba'alil, if the moon is clearly visible to all, ein mechalel in Shabbos. So machlekes. Says the Mishnah story. That's the way Rabbeinu HaKadosh would express how he sides. That Maisa, there was a time. She'avru yoiser ma'aboim zug. The Adam that saw the new moon lived anywhere beyond Lud and Yerushalayim. And for them to go to Yerushalayim, they were going through Lud, not 40 witnesses, 40 pairs. Rabbi Akiva saw people traveling. Let's say the only chilul was Tchum. So what? Tchum Shabbos. I think Rabbi Akiva noch is the one that says that Tchum Shabbos is D'Oraisa, right? Perfect. And he felt that if they're going to go to Yerushalayim, it doesn't matter D'Oraisa or D'Rabbanan. He felt so many people saw the new moon, enough already. You can stay here. Shalach loy Rabban Gamliel, who was the head of the Sanhedrin, to his colleague Rabbi Akiva, excuse me. Yeah, very nice. You're right that right now there was no need, but if you stop people from coming, what do you think they're going to do next time around? They're going to remember, last time I went ahead and Rabbi Akiva told me not to go anymore. So I don't have to go again. You will create a problem in the future. And that's why, even if you have, no matter how many people, in other words, that's like the sheet of the Tanach. I don't care how clear it is. You have to go to the Sanhedrin. And by the way, we're going to learn later that they made a whole party for you and a Seudah for you. They really did everything they could to incentivize people not to feel it was redundant. You are needed, even if everyone else also went and saw it. Says the Gemara. Now, first, a semantic. My mashma that the word alil, where do you find lishna de megalehu implies clarity, right? Gilui. So Amar Ababohu, Amakra, where it says Imrois Hashem, that the words of God Almighty are Amoris Tahoris, they are pure. And now Kesef Saruf, they are purified like silver. Ba'alil La'aretz, clear to the world. Notice the words of Hashem are so purified that even the world sees that it's clear. That's the word alil. And now the pasuk adds mizukak shivasayim. It's refined sevenfold. So that's the where you have in the pasuk that alil means revealed or clear to all. Now the fact that the Torah, when speaking about God's word, it says mizukak shivasayim. Literally, chavra shivasayim means sevenfold. But shivasayim can also mean 7 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49. So we're going to have a little bit of Agadah regarding the Chamishim, Sharei Bina, regarding the 50th gate is something that's beyond a human comprehension altogether. How Moshe Rabbeinu reached the greatest level that it's humanly possible, which would be the Mezukak Shivasayim. Forget the words of God is the Torah. God gave the Torah to Moshe, so he got the refinement in the full Shivasayim, not sevenfold, Shivasayim 7 times 7. Rav Shmuel. Chadamar nun sharei bina nivra ba'olam. Then in the level of bina, you have 50 levels. One is deeper, broader than the other. And v'kulam nitnu l'Moshe chasar echad. And he got all 40. He got 50 minus 1, just 49. How do we know that? Because since it says v'techasreu ma'at melokim, that you, God, made him, meaning Moshe Rabbeinu, a little bit less than Elohim. And Elikim is in reference now to Bina. If there's 50 Sharei Bina, and Moshe Rabbeinu was Batechasreu Ma'at, Abyssal Dinziger, 49. Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's the Mizukak Shivasayim. Okay. Now, when it says regarding Shloimeh HaMelech, Shloimeh HaMelech has many names. One of his names is Koheles. Now, there's many reasons. The simple reason is that Koheles comes from the word Kihel. Shloimeh HaMelech wasn't only the wisest man, but he was able to gather all of the different chachmas together and to show that each one is just another side of the same truth. Machlal, that's a big sheet of our Rebbe. When it came to learning Torah, it was so important for the Rebbe, not only to learn the Torah on all of the levels, and Pshat, and Nemesh, and Drush, and Soid, but there was an importance of showing how one level of the Torah is really connected to the other, that it's really Torah Achas. And how one level of the Torah, especially the inner part of the Torah, the Hasidus, it complements. It's not an upshat. So that's Koheles. He gathered everything together. Anyways, that's one of the names of Shloimeh HaMelech. So it says that Bikesh Koheles, that Shloimeh HaMelech sought, he wanted Limtzoi Divrei Chayfetz. He wanted to find the words of delight. Now, the words of delight, Torah is also called Chayfetz. But delight, Tainug, is already in a very high madrega. So you know what it means that Shloimeh HaMelech was trying to find Divrei Chayfetz? It means that just like Moshe Rabbeinu was gifted all of the Chamishim, Chaser Echad, means he got 49 gates of Bina, Shloimeh HaMelech wanted to reach that same level. And Bikesh Koheles Liyois K'Moshe, this is all Chad, one of the two. And for that, Yotzatza Baskel v'Amr Eloi, no, that V'Kosuv Yosher Divrei Emes, the words of truth, are recorded properly. That what? Now, who spoke about Nevuah? We'll speak about it in a moment. But this one, Chad of Rav and Shmuel, felt that if you have this already, the 49th gate, or the 50th minus 1, that puts you on a level of a Navi, and that would make Shloimeh as great as Moshe, and it says in the Chumash that no one great as Moshe, so he was not granted that wish. However, v'chad Omar, no, that he was granted that wish. I shteitach v'loikam navi oid b'Yisrael, and achanami b'neviim loikam. the level of nevuah. But b'malachim, now malchus, you have to understand how to really understand the Gemara, but the simple way, the malchus come that a king could become as great as a king of a Moshe, and when it comes to ruling, a melech rules with his understanding, not with nevuah, connected to bina. So Shlomo HaMelech was granted that wish. According to that other opinion, Bikesh means it implies that he wanted, but he was not granted. So the pshat there is something else. That Bikesh Shlomo HaMelech was granted the nun sharebino chasad echad, and because of that insight, Shlomo HaMelech felt that he's able to judge even when there were no witnesses, and if there was no hasra'ah. Now, hasra'ah means that by the Jewish law, if someone, a violator, and we have witnesses that he violated or she violated, if they were not forewarned, not the way you think. We're going to learn this in Shavuos. Forewarning means that one of the Eidim, Dafka, they have to give you a warning. They have to know how to tell you the warning. They have to tell you what you may not do. They have to quote you the source in the Chumash where it comes from, with the punishment, within Toich Kedei Dibur of your violation. There's a very, very limited pocket, and if you didn't get that type of forewarning, you'll be off the hook in a human base. Now, and Hanami, why do you have to have Asra? This is easy to understand, because the person can claim, I didn't know it's that prohibited. I didn't know. Shlomo HaMelech, now that he was that wise, he knew whether you knew or not. We think we know, but we're not certain. He knew. So he felt that Bikesh Kahelis Ladan Dinam Shabalev, that which is normally concealed, for him it was revealed, which means that there were times that even if you didn't have proper Eidim, Shlomo HaMelech felt he knew what happened. Or the Marsha speaks about where do we get to Shalei Hasra, but that's, or even if there were Eidim, but there's no Hasra, Al Pi Din Torah, you can't punish him. Shlomo HaMelech, because of his chachma, because he was granted this, he felt he can give up psak din. That was the bikesh, and God told him nisht. Yotzes Sabaskal v'amrulay, no, that the kasuv yoishe divrei yames, the words of truth are recorded in the Torah. That al pi shnayim edim, and I want you to know that in the sugya of hasra, we learn the dinei hasra from this pasuk also. That the hasra has to come from the mouth of the two edim. So both, you always need to have Eidim and you need to have Asra. I just want to share a certain insight, Al Pi Chasidus. I want to give a story. The Rebbe Rashab, for many years, we know, wasn't officially yet the Rebbe. When he was 26 or 27 years old, he wrote a letter, the Rebbe Rashab, to a chassid in Kremenchuk known as Chaim Ber Vilensky, who was at least double the age of the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab was learning Maimorim Imre Bina. He was learning Maimorim from the Mittel Rebbe that are the deepest, the most complex Maimorim that we have. And he asked this chassid, who was again his senior, explain to me pshat in the mind. The chassid Rab Chaim Ber felt that it's very inappropriate for a chassid to explain to the Rebbe pshat and Chasidus. He did not answer the letter. A few months later, the Rav of Kremenchuk, Rabbi Yitzchak Yoel, came to the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe told him that there's someone in your city, Reb Chaim Ber Vilensky. I wrote him a letter, and he didn't respond to me. So when the Rav came back, he tells Reb Chaim Ber, how do you have such a chutzpah? The Rebbe wrote you a letter, you didn't respond? So he asked, Reb Chaim Ber asked the Rav, did the Rebbe tell you what he wrote in the letter? No. He asked for me to explain to him the meaning of a maimer of the Mittel Rebbe, and Reb Chaim Ber says, regarding a Rebbe, he'll figure it out without me. In other words, he didn't find that it's appropriate for a chassid to tell the Rebbe pshat. Now listen to this. A few months later, Rab Chaim Ber Vilensky came to Lubavitch. This is when we were still in Lubavitch. And he was davening. And the Rebbe Rashab heard what he said, that he didn't answer the letter because he felt that the Rebbe would figure it out without him. The Rebbe observed him davening for a long while. And then he said that, yes, it's correct that a Rebbe can figure it out without the help of a chassid. But this is very important. What I wanted to know, see, the Rebbe Rashab learned something and he understood it. But he didn't know whether he understood it al pi seichel enushi, with a human mind, or he only chapped it because he was a godly person and he saw the godliness in it. This Rab Chaim Ber Vilensky, the Rebbe Rashab felt was a big chacham, but he didn't have that level of godliness. And the Rebbe Rashab asked him for pshat, not because the Rebbe didn't know it. He wanted to know whether a person who's a big chacham, but not, let's say, a navi, will be able to grasp it. The Rebbe Rashab wanted to know whether his understanding it is on a level of nevuah or only on a level of chachma. And by the way, the whole kavanah of limud HaTorah is that it should not be learned on the level of nevuah. Torah has to be brought down to seichel anushi. That's the whole concept of the Torah was given in this world. In other words, Shlomo HaMelech achieved the level. It's beautiful. Shlomo HaMelech thought that when, according to the second opinion, that when God granted him even the 49th gate, he thought this is still chachma. This is still connected to chachma, and therefore, if I can use this to determine a halacha. What Hashem told him is, no, that this level of wisdom that you have is already no longer in the realm of just wisdom. It can only be done with nevuah, and to know it on a human level, you have to have edim and asra, and beautiful, the kasav, yoshed, divrei emes, and that will never change, God willing to be continued.
Shkoyach.
Kayach, great.
Yeah.